So man, it's gonna be interesting to see how this stuff kind of plays out with these. I know you've been checking out the articles with the you're seeing all this intermodal traffic coming into the ports and all of that stuff.
Yeah, man. People throw the big word around like logistics, and it's vague at times. But, it's just been interesting what the facts have been lately on intermodal intermodal traffic or the lack thereof in some cases, and you know the role of railroads play in it.
It's crazy. I say it's just interesting that the ports are seeing record container movements and inbound shipments and outbound shipments, but yet and still the railroads, the intermodal traffic. Like when you look week to week and stuff, you see the intermodal traffic figures is like it's very inconsistent. It's either going up, going down. I mean, there's numerous reasons that could be, but it's just weird that it seems like the railroads aren't capitalizing on this additional port. I don't know if it's the lack of capacity. Like it's just interesting, man. It doesn't seem like the correlation is not between increased traffic there and sustainable growth on the railroads, especially on the class ones. It just seems kind of weird that it's not um it's not the traffic isn't translating to additional intermodal traffic on the rails, it seems like.
No, it doesn't, man. And I can't wait to dive into this a little bit further.
Yeah, it's I think it's probably gonna be something we're gonna have to, revisit here in a very, 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 very near future, brother. Very near future.
Can't wait, man.
The material contained in the Diverging Clear podcast is for informational purposes only. The ideas and opinions expressed in the podcast does not represent the views or missions of the National Rail Passenger Corporation or Amtrak or the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission. This is a Diverging Clear podcast.
Approach Diverging, milepost 20.04. Diverging Clear, milepost 20.06. Welcome to Diverging Clear, your transportation podcast, with your hosts William Moore and Jermaine Walker.
Welcome to the season 2 premiere, episode 1 of the Diverging Clear podcast. I'm your host, William Moore, and coming to you from the Eastern Seaboard is my co-host, Jermaine Walker. I'd first like to say thank you for tuning in, and also don't forget to click the like and subscribe button for this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google Play, Anchor, and any other platform that you listen to or watch your favorite podcast. Let's get down to business. How you doing today, my brother?
Man, it's been a while. Happy New Year, and it's great. It's definitely great to be back. I apologize for the background noise. Apparently, my neighbors are arguing, but if you don't mind that, hey, let's get it going.
Hey, this is what happens in the new technology age. Sometimes you pick up sounds that
yeah, it's
you ain't
weird,
got no
man.
control over. Streets is real out here.
I don't know who's winning. So
I can tell you who's gonna win, but I digress. Hey, it's good to see you, brother. Glad everybody's back healthy. It's always a blessing when you're able to make it back. We're back for season 2. We gonna have this is gonna be a fun year, man, and fun topics, informational topics. We're gonna try to keep you interested, but man, it's good to see you again. Good to be back. But let's see what you got for our first topic on today's episode.
Absolutely. Why not kick this off with a good old fashioned fight? Or as Railway Age called it on February 17th, 2022, STB Slugout, Amtrak versus CSX, round one. 62 persons made statements, followed by the combatants themselves. The battle line was drawn roughly 50-50 between those who want to see passenger trains between Crescent City and Mobile and those who don't. This 13th article is an account of the battle from my virtual viewing position on the STB YouTube channel. I believe the difference between Amtrak's willingness to pay and CSX's demand for payment is within negotiable range, but there was a little acknowledgement of that at the hearing. The latest skirmish was fought hard on Tuesday and Wednesday, February 15th and 16th. Holding their grounds through it all were Amtrak, joined by elected and other officials from Mississippi and advocates for passenger trains from around the nation, and CSX, its shippers, and a multiplicity of officials from Mobile and elsewhere in Alabama. The front extended into offices and dens throughout much of the nation. The objectives of both sides were strongly articulated, and the battle line was clearly drawn. The action lasted for slightly more than 10 hours, 3/4 of it on Tuesday. Pre-trial matters that were not a part of the hearing followed on Wednesday. Based on the testimony, both sides have clear objectives. Amtrak and its allies plan a major campaign, if they win the battle, to convince the states to establish new state-supported trains and corridors in every region of the country. Its battle plan is Connect US, revealed last year, Amtrak's 2035 map, hopes and challenges, and is Amtrak's 2035 map riding on a surfboard. CSX and its allies wish to prevent Amtrak from ramming Connect US down their throats. STB Chairman Martin J. Oberman managed to retain his neutrality and composure throughout the proceeding, and he started by laying out the ground rules for the combatants. He said he wanted interested persons, other than parties, to give their impressions, and mentioned that this was a case of first impression, which everybody knew, whether or not they chose to admit that in their statements. He said Amtrak has made its application under 49 USC 24308 E and introduced the hearing by announcing Amtrak is seeking an order requiring CSX and Norfolk Southern to allow Amtrak to operate 2 round-trip intercity passenger trains per day over the rail lines of CSX and Norfolk Southern between New Orleans and Mobile. We have had discovery in this case, and we've received numerous filings already, including evidence and argument by Amtrak, CSX, NS, and the Port of Mobile. Early next month, we will have a formal hearing on the record involving those 4 parties. The primary purpose of today's session is for interested persons, other than the 4 parties to the case, to provide comments.
So that was a lot there. That was a lot, but
Yeah.
interesting topics. And I'll let you speak on this because if you actually listen to the whole episode and the disclaimer, certain things I can and cannot talk about, but I'll leave this to you, brother.
Well, I'm not gonna. What I will say is, after, man, let me tell you, there's a lot of hours sitting there listening to this. A lot of hours. But what I would say to me is interesting. Admittedly, this is the first time I've heard of STB Hearing. At least this part of it, where see you got the big wigs from CSX and Norfolk Southern Amtrak, going back and forth on that case of why or why shouldn't. I would say the STB had some fair questions. They really they really looked at this, to me, with a good set of glasses, if you will, for both sides, arguably. And I really, what I really appreciated was the cases that CSX represented their case pretty well. of why the infrastructure needs are have to be paid for and things of that nature. Because one of the things you always hear the kids on the street say, yesterday's prices are not today's prices, and in a sense of yesterday, what worked for infrastructure doesn't work for today. And so, and so to me, between Amtrak's case and what CSX and NS is arguing, I really leave all out the other people. For the most part, the CSX and NS case and Amtrak case, I feel like there's a middle ground somewhere. Maybe not the what 2.3 billion that six CSX was asking for or requiring, of course, but I feel there's a middle ground. And I think Amtrak is will have to come up with some money because again, one of the things about the infrastructure was a lot of the sidings mentioned. I think it was about three of them, so don't quote me on that, but are 10,000 feet in length, and where they are today, running trains. The trains, a lot of the trains are way more than 10,000 feet in length as far as the freight trains go. So you're going to have to extend those, make those sidings signaled or controlled sidings. I believe they said at the hearing those a lot of those sidings are not signaled sidings. So again, it was a long hearing, but it was interesting, and I think there's a middle ground there. Um, Amtrak wants to run on freight. I know they're obligated to since freight a long time ago gave up passenger service. But it's there's going to be a cost in the middle, um, to restore infrastructure and build on new infrastructure, to make this happen. But I thought it was interesting, and if you really have time, I think people should really just really sit back and just and take a look at that. But that's my view from it.
Hey, one thing I can speak on it is, or well, it's not even necessarily speaking on it, but I'm just curious to see because there were some issues raised by Chairman Oberman, some points that he brought up about the congestion that's already exists on that territory, which to me, I think that's going to be an interesting question. I think they kind of passed the buck on until they're going to explain it a little bit more in the hearing, because he was asking about in particular congestion around Gentilly Yard, and I believe also near in over in Mobile about where they wanted to relocate, wanted to locate the Amtrak station. But it to me it was an interesting question because I mean, as you alluded to, today's prices, yesterday's price ain't the same as today's price. And Lord knows we knows that right now. Try going to the gas station or going to buy a loaf of bread. We know this, but I think the important question I think that CSX and NS are going to have to answer is, okay, if you already if you're having these issues, because I remember them talking about the coal train at Duffy Island, and they had delays um, basically built into these certain train schedules. Um, why haven't you addressed it? If you know that these areas are delayed or congested, you're building in time in their schedules, which I thought was an excellent question.
Mhm.
Why haven't you addressed those capacity or those issues, um, either by service design or basically by infrastructure design? And you got to also understand that is a very geographically challenging area, especially on the New Orleans side, because there's just not a lot of land there. let's be. I think every nook and cranny that can fit rail in is pretty much been filled with every bit of track that they can fit. But I think it's just interesting that um, the way that it's being perceived is that these uh, two round trips would be the make and break of this territory. And just on a personal, this is no reflection of any thoughts or opinions of Amtrak or anybody else. This is just my thought from being a former train dispatcher and being a former, just being in the rail industry, knowing Amtrak trains are typically less than 1,000 feet, technically really less than about 400 feet. You can't squeeze two trains in there, but I'm just saying. That's not going to make or break that territory. That's all I'm saying. And I'm going to leave it at that because otherwise I'm going to get in some trouble. But I'm just saying, like, you can't figure out how to fit a 400-foot train. And like I said, that's probably with extra cars because, all right, average Amtrak car is 89 feet. The locomotives are about 70 feet. So if it's a 3 or 4 car train, I mean, that's basic math. Y'all can't fit that in? Really? Like, it's this much of a challenge to figure it out, but I'm sorry, I digress. I'm gonna get in trouble. That's it. I'm done with it.
Yeah, yeah, man. Without hijacking this, I'm gonna just say, yeah, it's interesting, man. I could see the case on both sides. I'll keep it to myself as to which way it sounded like they were leaning. From that, if you could really say they were leaning, I would just say more so who made their argument a lot better than others, and
We'll leave it at that.
yeah, we'll definitely have to leave it at that.
I'll tell you what, I will be tuned in, and you can call me a real nerd if you want to, but I will definitely be listening to that hearing, that next hearing, or if I got to watch the replay of it, because that the actual hearing is going to be interesting, because I think it's going to be a wealth of information and philosophies expressed in that hearing, and I'm gonna be interested to hear how it goes. So that's my last say on it, but I am looking forward because this is going to set an important precedence. You know, one thing that they covered was that there was abilities for this service to be reestablished years ago, and it wasn't, which me and you discussed offline before why this is an interesting fight because the way Amtrak is structured, and it's so many different things that's feeding into this, which every argument you can say, okay, that's a good point on this side. Okay, that's a good point on that. So this is going to be interesting how they shake this out. But like I said, for reasons that we've mentioned before, especially my disclaimer, that'll be the last I say about this.
Dealing with freight and passenger trains mixing together sometimes could be it's very messy. And I'm gonna tell you, I honestly think what Virginia worked out with CSX in regards to the RFMP and the big purchase there, I really feel like that is gonna be the foundation, the framework for what railroad may look like going for freight and passenger railroad look like going forward in the future, to really get these corridors that passenger is really looking to get and really looking to run in that kind of space. I think Virginia really laid the framework, the groundwork, if you will, to say, hey, this is what we need to do to run our trains, state supported with Amtrak and VRE. I just, they really, they did a mic drop. Say, hey, you know what do you need? We want this. You got it. What do you want? And bam. And that may just be the path forward, man. Honestly.
Yeah, fair point. We'll see how it shakes out, man. We'll see how it shakes out. Let's moving on to the main story of today's episode, which was garnering a lot of attention at the beginning of January. I'll go ahead and bring this up. But the BNSF and Montana Rail Link decision to end its lease, and the property is essentially returning back to the BNSF. So what's going on here is just the Railway Age article from January 11th, 2022. Well, this is a little over a month ago. After more than 30 years of operating BNSF-owned main line between Huntley, Montana, and Sandpoint, Idaho, Montana Rail Link reported on January 10th that it's ceasing its operation. Ceasing its long-term lease with the Class 1. This is the article said from Railway Age, January 11th. As the freight market has evolved, more than 90% of the freight volume moving on the MRL is on is on BNSF trains, the Class 2 Railway Age 2013 Regional Railroad of the Year, explained in its January 10th letter to its employees. It issued a media notice later that same day. When MRL was created in 1987, our vision was to become a safe, reliable regional railroad in partnership with BNSF, then Burlington Northern, to provide customers with competitive, consistent service and employees with good, stable jobs. President Derek Oldman wrote to the employees of the MRL, which was founded by entrepreneur Dennis Washington and is part of the Washington Companies. Thanks to you, we have achieved that vision together and answered the call since the day we began operating our trains. MRL, the main street of Montana, has operated more than 900 miles of mainline and branch trackage from Jones Junction, which is located in Huntley, Montana, west to Sandpoint, Idaho, where the trackage rights beyond Sandpoint to with trackage rights beyond Sandpoint to Spokane, Washington, over to BNSF. He noted that the regional had flourished not only through its service to more than 100 Montana-based customers, but also by providing an important bridge route for roughly 1/3 of BNSF traffic moving to and from the Pacific Northwest. Much of that PNW traffic involves grain, coal, and other commodities being exported overseas, making MRL a key player in international trade. MRL on January 10th reported that the line has become a critical link in BNSF's Northern Transcontinental Network, delivering grain, consumer, and industrial products to the West Coast. By MRL ending its lease and BNSF resuming operations of its line, BNSF will eliminate the need to interchange freight between the two railroads, strengthening the resiliency of the supply chain and enhancing rail capacity in the Pacific Northwest. One of the last parts I just want to mention from this article is that BNSF has committed to retaining the 1,200 plus union and non-union employees of the MRL in their current jobs with similar pay, benefits, seniority, and other employment terms, according to MRL. While MRL and BNSF have reached an agreement to terminate the lease before it concludes, the move will require the negotiation of collective bargaining agreements with affected unions, and it must be approved by the Surface Transportation Board, MRL stated. So that's a lot there, a lot to go through there. But essentially what this is saying is that basically the Montana Railway became the BNSF. Long story short of it, with all the traffic that they're moving. And I understand what the BNSF is saying is, why are we interchanging to another railroad when that's technically our railroad? And then it gets, they're basically handing off twice or handing off once when they could just roll it back into their fold. And so it's another article that's mentioned there. But before I move on to the next article, any comments that you got there, Jermaine?
It's got to be a little bit of a culture shock to employees that are at MRL. MRL, like, I knew personally a lot of people that was interested in going to Montana just to be there and be a part of the company. But I've heard nothing but great things from the people that do work there, and it's a little bittersweet. From the eyes, their locomotives are beautiful, man. I gotta the color scheme just, so as a fan, I'm gonna miss that. Like, just the color schemes, and they did a locomotive with the armed services and the representation there. So it's pretty good, but in a way, I do think about the employees and just how that's beautiful, man. I think about the employees, man. I think it may be a bit of a culture shock, like going into BNSF, a little bit, and that's not a dig at BNSF, but I'll tell you, BNSF has got a lot of battles on their hands right now, especially with the whole timekeeping issue that they have going on with the time and attendance, and the court battles where they're against the union members going on strike. mainly T&E, of course. So I just hope that those MRL employees really get treated well as they get folded into BNSF. But so it's bittersweet, man. It's bittersweet.
I agree. Well, I ain't gonna lie, my favorite, probably outside the SD 40-2s and the SD 70s. Montana
Oh
Rail
boy.
Link has
Oh
some
boy.
the Montana Rail Link has some nice SD 45s, man. I love those, man. They that in the blue and black scheme with the Montana Rail Link on the side. That's just I just had to mention that because that, we do we as we do talk about too, we are rail fans too. We don't only work in the industry, we love this industry, so we pay
Yeah.
attention to that.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, one of my co-workers, Peter Lewis, that I work with at Amtrak, he actually just left out on Saturday evening, flying into Billings, Montana to go photograph the Montana Rail Link for his vacation.
Nice.
So he's supposed to, I'm hoping he sends me some pictures because I wanted to put some in on our at some point in this episode. But yeah, one of my coworkers just went, it just literally is up there right now, taking pictures as as we kind of we know that this is going to be coming to an end. There's no reason why the STB would deny them ending the lease, especially with the conditions involved, that they're going to retain their employees. They're not shutting no traffic. They're going to keep operations as is. So I don't see it being a big deal. I think the STB will, unless a union or somebody objects, but I still think it's going to happen. But the time might be limited for you to get up there and get some photographs or get some video up there. So, he said it is a little bit bittersweet, but to be honest with you, I think it was something that was gonna become necessity at some point. We'll go into this next article from Trains magazine. I'll read the beginning portion of it, and it's from Bill Stevens of Trains, and he talks about the reason that the why the BNSF needed to essentially to terminate this lease, that it needed to come to an end. So I'm gonna go ahead and share that, and then we'll talk about this a little bit. So like I said, this was in Trains magazines by Bill Stevens on January 21st, titled BNSF Needed to End Montana Rail Link Lease Analysis. So it says that BNSF is taking back Montana Rail Link's lease on the former Northern Pacific Main Line across Montana and Idaho for one simple reason: to control its own destiny. In recent years, the growth-minded BNSF has made significant capacity investments on the routes to and from the Pacific Northwest. To the east of MRL, BNSF built new and extended sidings between Fargo, North Dakota, and Billings, Montana, area while adding centralized traffic control and positive train control, even though it was not mandated to do so. BNSF also expanded terminals in let me see if I can get that right, Forsyth and Glendive, Montana, and Mandan, North Dakota. To the west of the MRL, BNSF is building a second bridge over Lake Penn. This word always gets me. You know how to say that? Lake Penn or
I don't even think I could try, man.
let's just call
We'll
it
call
Lake
it
Penn.
Orielli.
Yeah, let's go. Lake Penn Orielli in Sandpoint, Montana, to eliminate the single track bottleneck at the funnel where MRL and the Northern Transcon converge. BNSF also double tracked this from Sandpoint to Spokane, Washington, and installed double track and extended sidings from Spokane to Pasco, Washington. BNSF can't add more capacity on the former Northern High Line across Montana's northern tier. There's just no room to double track the Northern Transcon in the confines of the Kootenai River Canyon. I had to say that slowly. They won't get no trouble.
No, I got you.
So here's a map of what they're talking about. The area here, the rail link here, and then of course the BNSF Northern Transcon there. Which it says, the article continues, which brings us to MRL. The Unicorn Regional Railroad was created as a 590-mile bridge route between Burlington Northern at Sandpoint and Jones Junction near Billings. While MRL has added capacity since its operation inception in 1987, it has not done so at the same pace as BNSF. The result, BNSF could more than double the traffic carried on its route from Fargo to Jones Junction, if not for Jones Junction Sandpoint capacity constraints on the MRL. There aren't physical barriers to adding capacity on the MRL on Montana Rail Link, but because the way the 60-year lease is structured, the volume guarantees for MRL, the proudly independent regional has little incentive to lay new track or hire more train crews to support BNSF volume growth and seasonal traffic surges. 25 years ago, BNSF CEO Rob Krebs sought to undo the lease, but the savvy MRL owner, the Washington companies, knew a good deal when it saw one and would not budge. Since then, BNSF has taken a carrot and stick approach. At times, it offered MRL more volume in exchange for capacity expansion projects. At other times, BNSF diverted traffic off the MRL to the High Line, but neither approach or good faith efforts could get BNSF and MRL on the same page. Before the pandemic hit, a traffic surge tapped out capacity on the High Line. MRL couldn't serve as a relief valve because it did not have enough crews or sidings. Traffic backed up on the BNSF, with congestion raising costs and taking a toll on service. The bottom line, the BNSF can't take full advantage of millions spent on capacity projects unless the MRL constraint is removed. So I'll kind of end it there so we don't keep reading on, but as we can see where this is going. The BNSF had to get it back. The MRL didn't have any incentive, as the article stated, didn't have any incentive in order to help the BNSF increase traffic flow up there. MRL was good with the traffic they were getting. They were okay with the money they were receiving and didn't see the need to take on something more than what they felt comfortable taking. But in this present time, right now, this isn't conducive to, especially with the supply chain issues, to and from ports, other areas being capacity constrained. BNSF didn't have much of a choice. I'm glad this time that the MRL went ahead and said, and I would say MRL is doing the right thing by doing this, because they realize that their operating philosophy may be conducive to them, but it may not be conducive to the overall transportation network of the country. Henceforth, even the supply chain of America. So I'm kind of, in that respect, I'm glad that the MRL has recognized that and was willing to go ahead and terminate this lease so that BNSF can take it back into their fold and do what they need to do with it in order to make this a second leg of the Northern Transcon. Basically, return it back to to the roots that it originated in. So this is an excellent article by Bill Stevens, the way he breaks it down. And he touches on a lot of the facets of what's led to this decision and what's going to happen moving forward. So that's just, I think it's a good move. I think it's a necessary move. What's your take on it?
I mean, I find it interesting that, when you look at the math, BNSF currently operates around 59% of Montana's rail system in the state. And by taking it back, they, pretty much they'll control 84% of that. So numbers wise, BNSF is, like, you could say, more than cornered the market to carry any and everything out of the state. So, we already know they're huge as far as being a class one, but in that state alone, they're the big kids on the block. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just, it's amazing to me. And I didn't believe that when I was looking at the map of how transportation is broken down in Montana, and, how, it just really was mind boggling to me. You know, where the other railroads in Montana, man? Like, what, you know, the competition just don't seem there. Like, that I think that is what, you know, when you look at it, there are what, more than 3,300 miles of rail run by 12 companies, and BNSF operates 59% of those rail lines, with Montana Railing operating at 25%. I mean, but once it's folded, that's, you know, it's just interesting to me. And we always talk about the STB and competition and things like that, but like, what happened in Montana that that BNSF just seems to be like the beginning of the end. So I think that's what was interesting to me. And you know, it's definitely something worth watching. I wonder, and you know, I got nothing to back this up, of course. But I just wonder when this hearing happens, you know, even though BNSF has taken, um, you know, what was actually theirs to begin with, if you could say that, I just wonder, you know, can any other railroad step in and say, hey, you know, we would like, you know, trackage rights or something to that effect, you know, when this happens, when, you know, if this is approved and things like that. Like I said, I'm not an expert in all legal matters. I don't even play one on TV. You know, but I just I'm just curious as to, is that something that can be brought up when this goes to, you know, when this goes before the STB? I mean, when you look at the numbers are just ridiculous. You know, what BNSF does and will do when this is, you know, back under their umbrella, if you will.
That's sorry, man. That's I got some good news here going on in the background. That's all. So yeah, man, it's gonna be. I don't think the STB is well. Let's step back a little bit to what you were talking about. When you look at that map that I shared, when you look at the other in Montana,
Yeah, it ain't much other.
there is no other. There was Montana Rail Link and like uh, Montana Rail Link and BNSF. That's it. I was looking to see if the UP, you know, kind of if they delved into Montana at all, and it's like no. So I don't even know. You know, even from a if they wanted to be there, they would be there. Is what I would say. I don't think they want to be there. So the competition thing can't even. I don't even think the competition thing is going to even really shake out to be an issue because if somebody else wanted to be there, they would be there.
You know, I mean, I'd have to agree with that. It's just, man, you know, and there could be other places on the map that are like that.
No, there
I just
are.
never,
There are.
I just never seen one railroad dominate a whole state like that. Like, I mean, just completely dominate. Um,
Right.
and I just, you know, the numbers, I don't know why. Again, I don't know why the numbers were just really kicking me in the face. Like, man,
Yeah.
like they really, like, I mean, like, we want to move this by rail. Yeah, you only got one, you really only got one option. Depending on
Right.
where in Montana you are, you only have one option. So, you know, I just wonder though, with that territory, with that going, with MRL folding under BNSF, just, you know, will that, you know, will that be a topic of conversation, you know, for any other railroad to be like, hey, you know, at least trackage rights or something, you
Right.
know? Like, I just wonder if that's, you know, so it's just it's just worth looking into, you know. But
Right.
that's my take on that, especially when you look at the numbers.
Yeah, it's said at this point, I'm fairly certain it's going to happen. Um, it's going to be a sad end, but unnecessary. And I mean, all good things don't last. And at this point, this needs to be done to facilitate the growth, the traffic growth up north. Um, at this point, the BNSF was basically like, look, we understand, I get, y'all don't want to do this, y'all don't have to do this, but we really need, we need this as a corporation. We need to have this flexibility, so and one good aspect of it is if you can, they're going to probably hire people up there. So I don't think I think it's going to actually increase jobs in that area for people that's willing to go to Montana to run trains. I think it's going to increase jobs because they actually already mentioned, like, look, we need additional crews up there. When they couldn't relate, the Montana Railing couldn't operate as a relief valve because they didn't have possibly the manpower, not only the infrastructure, but they didn't have the manpower. So, you'll probably see them looking to hire people up there in that area to, to facilitate this, this growth that they're going to see up there. It's nothing saying that it's going to stop growing. It may even increase. So, all in all, I said, yeah, sad. It's going to be a sad end to a regional, but it's a necessary. It's not like it's being abandoned, right. Which would be a whole different conversation. It's not being downgraded. It's being taken over to be upgraded, which is very rarely, especially nowadays with PSR. It's very rare that you see that. We kind of talked a little bit offline, like, is there anywhere else in the country where something like this could happen? And first thing that came to mind in my area was where the CSX leases from Tolleson Junction in Gary, Indiana, to, I'm trying to remember the endpoint in Ohio, but they lease that portion of the line from the CSX. And it's like, would the CSX ever do that to the CF&E? My answer is no. Because if they were, they would have done it already, especially, with all of the, the different stuff. But CSXs say that their lines are fluid and that's excess capacity. So, could this happen somewhere else? It could, but like I said, the example I this rings out of my head is the CSX and CF&E, and I just don't see it happening. So I don't think this is like something that's going to be a precedence. We've had other times where rail lines were spun off to other railroads, to create short lines, and then eventually the railroad would either buy it back. But like, this is different because this was a lease. But in other situations where smaller regionals, I remember when the Chicago Central and Pacific was created here in the Midwest from former IC Granger lines. And eventually the Chicago Central was, guess what, reacquired by the Illinois Central, which they went back after they made it profitable, set up a good model. They said, you know what? All right, we want that back. And then they bought it back from them. So this is a little bit different with it being a lease as opposed to outright selling and then reacquiring it. But it's the same principle. It's like, can you drive something? I guess those regionals have been successful in turning what big class ones thought was excess capacity or redundant track and turn it back into a profitable business model. And then they're like, okay, we like that. Let's get that back. You know what I'm saying? So it's going to be interesting. I think this is going to be I think it's going to be a good move for the BNSF as a whole. I know you mentioned some of the labor issues and different things like that, but it's a different, I think the railroads need to adjust. And this is just opinion, adjust on how we operate things, even to off days that are provided for crews, at some point in time, this ain't as I would say, as my grandfather worked for the IHB back in the it's funny to say, it's mid 20th century, but this isn't my grandfather's railroad anymore, where guys worked 7 days a week. They worked 12-hour shifts. They worked, work. And that was the motto of the game. That was the name of the game. If you want to support your family, you worked, and you worked. And it's like nowadays, that's not the same mindset that people have. people want to be able to go to work and provide for their family, but they also want to be able to do other things outside of work, not just spend their entire life pushing buttons or driving train. Or, people don't want that model that model. So at some point, to address these labor issues and some of these different things going on a little bit of a different tangent, but things are going to have to change a little bit. We're going to have to shake up how we look at crews. We're going to have to look at how we do crew calling or how we staff trains or staff facilities. People mindsets have changed a lot. Like I said, this ain't railroading of the between the 1920s and I even say in the 2010s. The mindsets have changed over the last century. People don't want that. So it'll be interesting to see how this roll in, and interesting to see when the BNSF, because I know they're going to hire, when they open up, how many applicants they actually get or how many people they're actually able to hire. So it'll be interesting, man. I said, this is definitely not going to be the last time we talk about it, but this is definitely something interesting on the grid that came kind of out of nowhere, but it didn't. So we'll see what happens with it.
Indeed, man. We could definitely make that an episode, bro. About the new age of new generation of railroading.
So, man, I know those were pretty much the two topics we were going to cover for today. You got anything else in closing before we get out of here, brother?
Nah, man, it's great to be back, man. Look forward to many more episodes, man. We got so many things to discuss.
Yes, sir, definitely. And just want to say thanks to everybody for tuning in for episode 1 of our season 2, season premiere of the Diverging Clear podcast. Remember, you can check us out on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, Google Play, Anchor. Make sure you click that like button, click the subscribe button. Thank y'all for tuning in. We'll see you soon. Stay safe out there. Stay out of trouble. I'll try to do the same. And Brother Jermaine, we'll talk soon.
You got it, man.
Diverging Clear is sponsored by EME Rail Solutions, LLC. We don't own rail cars, locomotives, or tracks, but if you do, we provide cutting-edge solutions to maximize your assets. Visit us at emerail.net to learn more.
The Diverging Clear podcast is also brought to you in part by Precision Logistics, LLC. Precision Logistics, LLC. Meeting tomorrow's logistical needs today. Visit www.precisionlogisticsllc.info to learn how.